Would you like to know how to manifest miracles? Join us today with Kristin Morrison. Inspired by Napoleon Hill's wisdom, Kristin shares her awe-inspiring journey, revealing the power of beliefs, affirmations, and inspired action. What if your thoughts held the key to manifesting dreams? Dive into this episode where we explore mindset, courage, and creating a fulfilling life. Would you like to think and grow rich? If so, keep on listening. This podcast is dedicated to those who have found their way from fear to freedom and for those who are considering undertaking this amazing journey. This is the Courage to Be podcast, and I am your host, Tanya Vasallo. Before we get into this episode, I'm thrilled to share that I'm hosting a series on how people's lives have been influenced by the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. If you'd like to learn and apply how to think and grow rich, go to the show notes to get some wonderful free resources and join the Courage to Be community. I look forward to being your guide and mentor so you can transform your life. Welcome back to the Courage to Be, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And we are continuing with the Think and Grow Rich series based off of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich book. So today we have Kristin Morrison with us. Welcome, Kristin.
Thank you. I am really happy to be here.
I know, I'm excited. I've been wanting to get you on the podcast for a while, so I'm excited to hear your journey with Think and Grow Rich, actually. When did you first read this book and how did it impact your life?
Yeah, so I read it in my mid to late 20s. So it was a number of years ago, and I was blown away by it. First of all, the title is so compelling, right? And I had already been working with my mind in terms of beliefs that I had around certain experiences in my life and really wanting to transform them. And so as I began reading that book, I had so many light bulb moments go off in terms of really keeping your eye and your mind's eye on what you most want to create. He talks a lot about not how being unwavering and how powerful that force can be, where you imagine in your mind's eye. And then from there, it's not just this airy-fairy experience. So if it was just that, I think I wouldn't have been drawn to the book. But it's really like when you keep your mind on the prize, then what happens is inspired actions then arise to guide you to that path and end up where you want to end up. And I love that. I love it so much. And I began using it in my life in various areas, not just in money, but in drawing my husband to me.
Tell us that story.
Yeah,
I was going to ask you, can you give us some examples? So maybe you can give us the example of your husband.
Sure, I'd love to. Yeah. So, and then I also have an example of looking for a house to rent during a really intense rental crisis in my area. There were few homes, but so briefly, I'll tell you my husband. So I'm in my 50s and I was in my 40s when I woke up one day on January 1st. I often have epiphanies at the beginning of the year, and it's so cliche, but it happens to me where I'm like, I really want to make a big change in my life. And so I woke up and I realized that I wanted to be married. I had never been married. I had been in relationships, long-term relationships, but I realized I had never even admitted to myself that I wanted to be married. And at a certain point, I felt like I was sucked into the ageism that can happen with marriage in terms of, well, that ship has sailed. Maybe you're too old to get married, all the societal beliefs that are out there that if we're not careful and really conscious, we can get mired in that belief, those beliefs too. And so when I woke up that day on January 1st, I realized I really wanted to be married. And it felt vulnerable for me, even thinking about that with myself. But I knew that that was the first step for me, was getting clarity around that desire, right? So the desire is almost like entering the address in the GPS, where that's where we want to end up in terms of that particular desire, right? What do you want to create? So getting clarity. So my goal was I wanted to be married. And what I began doing, I did a lot of deep inner work. I mean, a lot. I did a lot of breath work. I did some therapy in terms of really looking at what was holding me back. I had been previously really attracted to unavailable men. So that was kind of a path for me that ended up in a lot of heartache. And so I realized that I needed to make some inner shifts. And so I began doing that. And then I began working with beliefs that I had. So one of the beliefs was, I'm too old to get married. And again, that was a societal belief. You know, at first, it seemed like it was my belief, but often these beliefs are just kind of floating around us and we can get kind of trapped in them. And so our job as human beings who want to consciously create a reality is to look at, actually, is that a belief that I have? Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. With this belief, I had gotten sucked into societal's belief. And so I began looking at, I don't think I'm too old to get married. And so I flipped it, and it was, what if I'm the perfect age to get married? And that, it's like the coin dropped within me. The light bulb went off, and I felt like it's true. I had done so much traveling. I had created a couple businesses. You know, I had done so much on my own as a single empowered woman, sometimes in relationships, sometimes not, but I was the perfect age to get married. And then I began saying these affirmations. I created these affirmations, and let me see if I can remember the particular affirmation that I said. So it was, I am in a healthy and loving relationship with a man who loves and adores me and who I love and adore. And I began saying that over and over. I would go hiking on this particular trail near my home. I would say it as I was hiking. And sometimes somebody would, you know, cross my path and I would be quiet. It was kind of embarrassing, like, because I feel like there is power in saying it out loud. You know, there's something about us hearing our own selves, saying the new reality that we want to create. And then I began inserting, I am in a healthy and loving marriage. And that was revolutionary. Again, that vulnerability came up, like, oh, I don't want to say that. You know, it feels too vulnerable, even for myself. But I began saying it. And what happened is the neural pathways, you know, they were in such a groove of I'm too old to get married, that they began to be ingrained in a groove of I'm the perfect age to get married. And in fact, I want a partner, I want a husband that loves and adores me and who I love and adore. Because I had been with men who were crazy about me, but I wasn't really crazy about them, or vice versa. And so it was like creating an equal experience. And literally 9 months to the day, I went on my first date with my husband.
I love it.
Yeah. And we have been married for a number of years now. And it's not a perfect relationship, because no relationship is perfect. It is the perfect relationship for me. And he will actually whisper in my ear, for you, I'm so in love with you. And he doesn't, like, eventually I told him about my process, but he did that before I talked to him about that. Yeah.
I love this story, and it's so beautiful. And there's so many powerful things in there, you know, from the affirmations turned into declarations because you're voicing them out loud. You know, they're not just an affirmation that's in your head, you know, and no, just this is what I want. And you're declaring your new state of being, your new reality. I love that, Kristin. And then him showing up and actually whispering those exact words. That is amazing.
Exactly. I just want to say, it wasn't that he like showed up out of the blue. I had to take action. So that's the part of the Think and Grow Rich. It's not just thinking about it.
Thank you.
About taking action then. So I began going on online dating and beginning to go out with men, and eventually I met him.
And that's such an important point. Let's go deeper into that part, because I feel like nowadays we can talk about affirmations. I like switching it from an affirmation to a declaration. Like I am declaring, and I am declaring and commanding my subconscious mind, so there's a big distinction, because there was this big hype with the movie The Secret, and law of attraction and all these law of attraction coaches and stuff. And I think it's great. And there is a law of attraction, but you also have to implement action. It's not that, oh, I'm going to imagine it. I'm going to say all these affirmations and a guy's going to come, my knight. And how do you say it in English?
Shining armor. Yeah.
I always mess that one up in English. He's not just going to show up without you doing anything. Like you said, it's such an important point to talk about taking action.
That's right.
What are you doing? And can you dive deeper into that and how you take that inspired action that you mentioned before? Because you were talking about taking like these inspired actions will come to you.
Yes.
How do you operate with inspired action?
Well, sometimes I have to really tune in. Like, is that an inspired action or is that my will? Because I am very strong-willed, which I love that part about me. I can be very stubborn, but that part is also very courageous, and it's willing to take action even when I don't want to. But within that, I can take action without really tuning into myself. So part of it is, how does this feel when I think about it? And there's a fine line between feeling afraid or resistant and feeling like it's an inspired action for me. So an example of that is with the online dating. I had done online dating. It had not been successful for me. In fact, it had felt very time consuming for me. And it felt like a job, actually. And so as that idea popped in my head, I realized I was super resistant to it. I didn't want to do it. I had done that. And I was kind of fighting with the universe, okay, of like kind of shaking my fists. Like, I don't want to do that. I've done that already. And what I heard, and I say heard in quotes, it's like what I heard in my mind's eye is, yes, you've done that already, but you're going to be doing it in a different way now. You've done a lot of inner work. And action for me without inner work, when there's been a big block, as there had been around relationships, that does not go well. Okay. It's me kind of throwing pasta at the wall, hoping something sticks. And that to me is not inspired action, but rather it's, oh, wow, I feel resistance. I feel a little anxious about it. There's a little bit of fear around going online again. It feels exhausting, but that was me really looking at it through the lens of the old me. And what I heard also is dating is a numbers game, and you are learning how to attract your partner. And so part of that is dating from this new place of only going out with men who are truly available. So and I didn't respond to anyone. I mean, I say that I didn't reach out to anyone. I didn't initiate. It was all about being the flower and having them come to me, right? And so if they would message me, let's say online dating, and they said separated in their profile or married, which rarely happened, but occasionally it would, I would be like, I wouldn't even respond because they weren't truly available. If they were separated, they weren't available. So I had to really pay attention to what was coming my way and making a choice around that.
That is such a huge distinction. I had a client that wanted to go on a date or have a significant other. We had her write out her list of all the qualities she wanted in this particular man, and she got everything, but she wasn't specific enough. And I think because that inner work hadn't been done, and it turned out that he was married.
Oh, wow.
So he had all the qualities, but the fact that you had noticed that, and it's a small little distinction, but that can make a huge difference. You know, it's like, okay, if he's separated or if he's married, that shows me, that's a sign that he's not fully committed. He's not ready. He's not what I'm looking for. And so I think that's so important, Kristin, to have that distinction. And you've said it so beautifully and eloquently of just, if you haven't done the inner work, it's not the same as taking inspired action, inspired action versus just doing the work. And I want to come back to that. I want to take a little pause right now, and we'll come right back to this subject because it's really interesting of going into action and working hard versus inspired action. If you've been enjoying this series of Think and Grow Rich on the podcast, I invite you to go to the show notes and download a free copy of the Think and Grow Rich book. You can keep it for yourself, you can dive deeper into the material, and you can start studying and learning what we've been talking about here. You see that other people have succeeded with these principles. So if you'd like to make a shift in your life, if you'd like to take your money income to the next level, make sure to book a call with me. If you're wanting things to change in your life, it all starts by making a decision and taking action. So just book your call by clicking on the link in the show notes. I look forward to supporting you in your journey. So let's come back here to inspired action versus doing hard work. I feel like sometimes we get into this mode of, I have to work really, really, really hard or, to do it, or we go with the rational mind, like what's the logical way of approaching this? Like you would have said, like with the example that you gave us, okay, well, I want a new person. I want a new significant other. Let me go on as many dates as possible. It doesn't matter if they're married or not married, or it doesn't matter if it's online dating or regular dating. Let me just get on as many dates as possible. But instead, you said something very poignant, which is it has to be inspired action. And that comes from having done the inner work. Talk to me a little bit more about the difference between that hard work and doing versus the inspired action that comes from being that flower and being receptive. How can we notice that difference? Is it connecting with our intuition? What is it for you?
So for me, there's more of a lightness. So it's subtle, but there's more of a lightness than a heaviness. There's more of a motivation than a drivenness. And so, it just feels light. There's a lightness to it. And one thing I noticed, I did actually go on a number of dates during that period of time. And some of them did feel like work, but it felt like conscious work. It felt like I'm curious about this guy that is messaging me. I'm going to check him out. And part of it was I had been really attracting guys who weren't a good fit for me. And so for me, I felt like I wanted to go on a number of dates to begin to put not only what I was realizing internally into practice, but to actually put it into practice in the real world. And so being face to face with a man in person, it's one thing to message or even be on the phone. It's a totally different thing to be in person with somebody energetically, right? They're there, you're seeing their mannerisms, their behaviors, little subtle cues that can alert whether they're available or not, whether they're a good fit or not. And so what I began doing though is really trusting my inner wisdom. And so sometimes men would look really good online, like very successful, handsome, blah, 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 whatever the case may be. I would be in front of them and I would feel that pull of like, oh, this guy has a lot of what I want, at least maybe even all of it, right? But how am I feeling? Oh gosh, I'm feeling kind of anxious around him. I'm feeling a lack of ease. I'm feeling unsettled. There's something that doesn't quite feel right. And is that, so part of it was me teasing it out. Is that me, getting into a new neural pathway, which is I'm going to date available men? Or is it, this isn't a good fit for me? And so it took actually going on a number of dates to begin to distinguish for myself in real time which was which. And what began happening, I would say maybe 3 to 4 months before I went on my first date with my husband, is that I began to really attract men that were close, a really good fit. And it wasn't that they were absolutely the right fit, but I was excited. It was fun. I felt like this effervescent feeling of, and I would go on, maybe 2 dates with them and really see, at the end of the second date, I would usually know yes or no, do I want to proceed? But anyway, that's a little bit about my process with that.
That is beautiful. And I love that you're giving us all those details, Kristin. And I think that's so important because I wanted to dive even deeper. Like, how can we trust that inner wisdom versus is it fear? I mean, you're talking about feeling. To me, that inner wisdom is connected with our intuition. Do you feel the same way?
Oh, completely. And I feel like,
how do you connect with that? That's my big question, because sometimes you might get a hit to take inspired action and say, like, something's telling you like, yes, call this man or do this business thing. And you're like, but that makes no sense. Your logical side of the brain is saying no. But your intuition and that inner inspired action that you're being asked of, you're just like, this makes no sense. How do you discern that? How can you trust that? And can you give us an example if that's happened to you where you're like, oh my God, this was ridiculous. I should have never done that. And then it turned out to be like a miracle or something amazing.
Often that is the clue for me. If it feels like, really? Should I do that? It was kind of like the online dating. Like I didn't want to do that. I think back to, I want to answer your question in just a moment about really, I think the question might be like, how have I cultivated my intuition to be able to hear it? So let me share a little something, and then I want to go back to that, if that's okay with you. Does that work for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, great. So one experience I had when I was going back to the example of me needing to find a place to rent, and it was the height of the rental crisis. There were few homes available in my area. And so I was looking for a house and I just could not find a place to rent. And I had to move. There was a particular time limit. I was actually leaving a relationship that wasn't a good fit. Okay. So this kind of dovetails a little bit, right? And so I was looking, not finding. Actually, homes were like double what I felt like I could afford at the time. And I ended up sitting down and saying a prayer to the universe and just saying, I need help. I don't know what to do. And it was write a list of what you want, write a list of how much you want to spend. And the amount that I wanted to spend was pretty low. It was, not what I could get. In fact, I told people, friends in my life, that I was looking for a place to live. And they said, well, how much can you spend? And I said, well, this is how much. And they said, you're never going to find anything for that amount. So, but I was strong in myself. And I was like, you know what? That's their reality, not mine. And so what I heard as I sat down was make a list of what you want. And I started with the amount that I wanted to pay. Same with the list of what I wanted with my husband, not the amount that I wanted to pay, but I wanted him to be available. Like, what's the biggest block here? So that's where I started with the place to rent. And then I made a list. And then I heard in my mind, post on Craigslist. And I was like, what? Post on Craigslist. And it gave me a title, 3 crisp $100 bills in exchange for a rental. That was the title. And then, and I did it. I was like, okay, I don't know where this is going. This seems very weird. And it was like homes, I want to rent a home. It was in that category. And so I wrote that, and then I wrote a list of what I wanted and started with the amount. And I said, if you're giving up a home, that you've been renting, or if you're a landlord, I am a fantastic tenant. And I ended up getting people that contacted me. So I had people out there in ethers, like marketing for me to find my perfect home. And a couple people contacted me, and the homes were pretty terrible. They were not what I was looking for. But then there was a woman who called me and said, I have your home. And the moment she said that, I knew. I could just feel it. I felt the internal yes. And she said, can you come over right now? And I said, absolutely. I drove over. It was the perfect home. She had lived there for 3 months and she absolutely loved it. It was a cottage, fireplace, bathtub. It had a big yard. It was all the things that I wanted, all the things. And it was the exact amount that I wanted to spend. She said, I found this great place. I'm allergic to the new carpet that they put in. I have this chemical sensitivity. Do you have that? And I said, no. And she said, I'm going to see if they'll let me transfer the lease to you. And they did. And that was my new home that I lived in for about 14 years. And they rarely raised the rent. So that's an example of that. Okay. But I had to do the footwork. So I want to go back to how have I cultivated that? So I have done a really important for me practice to cultivate my intuition. And it wasn't like I realized early on that it was cultivating my intuition. But now that I look back, I can see that it absolutely did. And the process that I've done for about 25 years is called the Artist's Way Morning Pages. And it's 3 pages of journal writing. And it's not critiquing the writing. It's writing from the soul, really. It's just seeing what wants to emerge. And I have about 5 huge boxes of these journals that are a result of me just doing like a morning download of all the things that are percolating in my mind. And what usually happens in the first or second pages, I'm just writing. Maybe I'm upset about something or excited about something or have a business idea. And then usually like toward the end of the second page and almost definitely around the third page is ideas percolate, inspired actions percolate. And my to-do list arises from that. And so I would recommend for anyone that wants to begin to cultivate their intuition, their gut instinct, to be able to deeply listen to themselves, to begin that practice of morning pages. It has helped me more than any other intuitive practice that I've ever had. And it's a process of over time. I feel like it builds upon, like each day builds upon the next.
I love it, Kristin. I so wanted to jump into that conversation. First off, thank you for that story about the rental. I have so many stories like that too. Yeah. Of just, you have to trust and you have to forget about the how. You like one of the things that stood out for me as you were telling that story is that you shared with other people when they said, how much are you willing to pay? And they're like, you're never going to find. Yeah. That's one of the first things we need to just, if it's our desire, and that's the desire that's been planted in our heart, that's the agreement between us and infinite intelligence. And it's not anyone else's business. And that's why when your friends or colleagues or family members that you're telling them that, they tend to poo-poo our dreams and our desires. And so one of the first principles with Napoleon Hill is, what is it that you want? And I love that you downloaded that and you said to yourself, you were doing that intuitively, maybe from reading the book, decades before or whatever, but that you were connected with that intuitively. What is it that I want? And you get very specific, whether it's with a partner, whether it's with a rental, whether it's, whatever it is that you're looking for. And I love that you were able to push that to aside and say, that's their reality, not mine. And so to me, that's a huge reminder. Your desire is your contract between you and spirit, God, infinite intelligence, source, whatever you want to call it, whatever resonates with you. I love that. I just had to emphasize on that part because that is huge, that you were so aware to ignore that in order to follow the dream. And then the how gets revealed to you. But see, the thing is with humans, we want to know the how before we want to take action. Unless I have certainty, I'm not going to do it, because how am I going to find a rental for $300 or for whatever the price, like whatever the outrageous number or thing is. So that I just want to give you kudos for your level of awareness, of presence, of intuition, and realizing that. And thank you for that story. That is just a fabulous story that I loved hearing. I love hearing these kind of stories. The second part that I want to contribute to this, for anyone that's listening, yes to morning pages. How long have you been doing? I've been doing them since 1997, on and off, because when I was pregnant with my daughter, when I gave birth, it was a little bit hard. Like I had to change my rituals, but have you been doing it for a long time too?
It's been over 25 years. I think the 25th anniversary of that book was maybe 1 or 2 years ago. So I think I got it like when it came out. An artist friend told me about it. And what I've realized is, I'm a business owner and a business coach, and I work with a lot of business owners who are struggling in their business and trying to create success. And some insight that I would give them and some guidance is that book is powerful in terms of morning pages being a powerful practice to create business success. It's counterintuitive because you think, really? I'm going to write in my journal and that's going to create business success? Oh, yes, because you will inevitably become clear through the process. It might not happen right away, but as you continue that practice, you will become clear about your desires. There will be, whatever poo-pooing that might happen internally or externally, you will begin to tap into your own innate wisdom. And how I feel about that practice is I have cultivated such a deep intimacy with myself. Like I know myself at such a deep, intimate level, and I love myself. Do I love myself every single day? Not always, but inevitably, more often than not, I really do. Like I love the vulnerability. I love the challenges. I love, the problems, because what I realize is that morning page practice can lead me on the path to being able to unravel it and get clarity and guidance from my deep inner knowing.
It's so beautifully said. And I just have to ditto everything you're saying. I've been doing morning pages, like I said, since 97. And Julia Cameron actually lives here in Santa Fe. I actually did one of her workshops here live over a decade ago. And like you're saying, Kristin, I just want, if anyone that's listening has never done this practice, first go out and read the book. Or if you don't want to read the book because you don't have the time for it, just put this practice in place. Like Kristin's saying, I can't tell you how many ideas, how much clarity I've gotten. I feel exactly the same as you. Like I know myself at a level that I never thought was possible. And it helps me. It's almost like my own therapist, like I'm just writing through the pages as a therapist. So I won't go deeper into that. We could have a whole other podcast episode about morning pages and connecting with our intuition and rituals and stuff. But I want to go into your business and how Think and Grow Rich, or the power of imagination, because what it sounds like to me when you're doing morning pages, you're tapping into one of your higher faculties, which is imagination. And you're connecting with that part of you that can imagine versus doing things, because we think that business is doing and replicating what everyone else has done.
That's
but
right.
when you tap and forget that, you can do that, but I think it's much more powerful when you tap into your imagination like you're doing. How has that benefited you with imagination in your business? Can you give us another story like that too?
Completely. In fact, I was itching to tell you about this because,
Please.
this is Think and Grow Rich. And so, of course, people that are listening are like, show me the money. That's, I don't want a husband. I don't want a, home. I want the money, the cold hard cash. Okay, here we go. So I started my first business in my early 20s, and I grew it to become one of the biggest companies of its kind in California. That's not actually what I'm going to talk about, but it's kind of a lead in to what I'm going to say. So one day I grew it, and I eventually had a number of staff members who helped me manage it. It was a service-based business where we provided services for homeowners, for people that had pets, pet care company. And I had 35 staff members, and I had a couple managers helping me manage it. And one day I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was telling me how she was going to go on a 3-month trip around the world. And I felt this immediate jealousy. It like knocked me for a loop. I didn't see it coming at all. And I just felt this wave of jealousy. And, we finished our conversation. And as I do with most emotions, strong emotions that I feel, I go to my practice of journal writing. And so I began writing like, I'm so jealous. I can't do that. And it's like, there was this part of me going, well, why can't you? Well, my business is too big. Well, so what? But nobody I know that has this type of business that's very hands-on in a lot of ways as a business owner has ever done anything like this that I know of, like travel the world while my business runs, right? Well, so what? Maybe you're the first. It was like every single excuse that I was putting up was my gut saying, why not? My inner wisdom, why not? And I realized I had this belief about making money. So this was something that I had worked on a couple of years before this experience, which was making money is hard. Okay, that was my belief. I had witnessed it with my dad, who worked very hard. He was a fantastic provider. He was always working so hard. And it wasn't until he was like exhausted that he would actually stop and rest. And so I grew up witnessing that and realizing to make money, I have to work hard. And I can either have time or money, but I can't have both. Like those were all the beliefs that I made up through my early role model of my dad, witnessing him, right? So I had to work on that. And I began working on that before I had this jealousy thing. And I began to see, well, maybe making money can be easy. Maybe I can have both time and money. And that's when I began hiring a manager and then another one. And so eventually I was working, when I had this jealousy thing, I was working 4 days a week, and my managers were managing 3 days a week. So I was able to have, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. And so I'm writing in my journal going, you work through this, making money is hard, to, you only work 4 days a week. You have a business that 3 days a week is basically running itself. I mean, through the wonderful care of my managers, of course. Why not see if they can help you, if they would be willing to manage? So it was like my inner wisdom was providing this guidance from my journal writing. It was like I was unraveling it. And so I thought, I can't ask them. They're going to be jealous that I'm going away, and I'm going to be across the world. Like, how are they, like, what if something happens? I'm not going to be able to help them. And it's like, stop worrying about it. Just ask. You can work out the details later. And that's something that I want to remind everybody who's listening. It's like, don't worry about how, just focus on what you want to create. The inspired actions will come if it is the right guidance, or the right heart's desire. Those actions will come. And so I contacted my manager, my main manager, and said, I've got kind of a crazy idea. I want to go away. And I actually decided I want to go away for 4 months. I said, I want to go away for 4 months. Would you be willing to manage for me while I'm away? And she said, let me think about it, and I'll get back to you. And she said, I'll get back to you tomorrow. And I was like, oh, what if she says no? I'm going to have to find someone who can help me, because now I was committed, I really wanted to go. She came back and said she would manage my company. So fast forward to, I immediately bought a ticket from 9 months to the date. There's something about 9 months for me. It's like the birth of something, right? So I bought a ticket, a non-refundable ticket, because I knew that would light the fire under my butt. And I began to get her all ready to do that. I also trained my second manager. I ended up going to India and Bali for 4 months. I had an amazing time. Before I came home, I said to the managers, I said, I want to do it again. I'm going to come home for a few months, but I want to do it again, and I want to do it double. I want to go away for 8 months. Would you be willing to manage for me? And they said yes. And so I came home, got them set up to do it again. And then I went back and I made, get this, more money not working than I had made actually living in the States, working my business for 4 days a week. I was subleasing my place. So I was renting my house. I was in a country that was the cost of living was very low. It was like a mind bend to me to be able to make more money not working than when I was working.
And then that is amazing. Again, you are full of wonderful stories. I know our time's limited. I'm going to have to bring you back onto the podcast because I love hearing all these stories. And I think this particular working hard to make money is for many of us. And you're not alone. I've been working on that one for years. And that's what Think and Grow Rich does. It helps you change your paradigm. It helps you get focused on what it is that you want. I wonder, did you ever go back to this woman that told you that she went on a trip and that you got so jealous? You should have gone back and thank her and say, you know what? Thank you, because you helped me change the way I think about things.
I did. And what I've told coaching clients too, say I'm jealous about something. I'm like, that's a clue. There is a desire. Don't see that as a negative thing. See it as a positive, even if it feels crappy. It's an opportunity to look at, what do I truly want?
Absolutely. You are so right, Kristin. You're so full of wisdom. And that's something that actually Julia Cameron talks about in The Artist's Way. If I remember correctly, she talks about listening to your inner compass in one of the chapters. And when you spot jealousy, if you see someone doing something that you're jealous, that's a sign for you to pay attention to it, but you did it intuitively. You don't even remember. I don't remember that. Look at The Artist's Way, because she talks about that. Well, tell me something else, Kristin, as we're wrapping up. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so they can go to my website, which is KristinMorrison.com. It's Kristin Morrison with 2 R's.com. And I have the Business Pathfinder podcast, which is coaching sessions with people who apply to be coached on the podcast that are struggling in their business. They want to unravel a challenge, a question, an issue. And that podcast is filled with coaching sessions that I do.
That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I have two more questions, actually. Sure. With when that shifted for you, like I said, I could go on with the podcast. I have way too many questions and I know we have to wrap up, but when that shifted for you, that you made more money not working or working much less, and traveling, did that set a new standard for you? Because now you don't go back to, you have to work hard. Were you able to abandon that belief?
I was. I mean, it creeps up sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
And part
But
of
you
it
catch
is,
it.
yes, and it's the hustle. Like I'm against the hustle. I'm against the grind. I am not interested in the hustle mentality. So I may notice myself being driven, working hard, and it's like, what's going on here? What am I avoiding? What feeling am I avoiding? Sometimes it's a feeling that I want to avoid because working hard and workaholism can be an addiction, right? So it can be a way to avoid feeling. And how can I get back into that sweet spot of making money is easy? And so just remembering that and kind of feeling into that process of, ooh, it feels to me, it feels like whipped cream. It's like swimming in a vat of whipped cream. It's like, ooh, I love it. Yeah, making money is easy. Why not?
I love it. That is awesome. That's going to be my tagline I take from this episode. Making money is easy. Why not? I'm going to add that because I use that as a declaration, as an affirmation, but I add the question at the end. Why not?
Yeah.
Or what if making money is easy?
That's right.
One last question, Kristin. What can our listeners do to live a life of more courage?
What can they do to live a life of more courage? Well, I would say to be aware that courage isn't just going to come out of the sky like a lightning bolt. It's not a coat you can buy. It's actually stepping through fear. And if you're feeling like you'd like some courage, you can think about and draw upon experiences in the past where you have courageously stepped through the fire of something that was very challenging, and that can help you tap into that courage that is your birthright. It's who you are as a human being. We all have the capability to be courageous, but it's not just going to happen. It's going to require stepping through the fear and being willing to take action.
I love it. This was fabulous. I love connecting with you again, Kristin, and thanks for sharing all these pearls of wisdom. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
I am so grateful that you joined me today. If you enjoyed it, there's one thing I'd like you to do. Click on the follow button so you don't miss a single episode. Leave me a rating and a review, and please share. As my way to thank you, email us a screen grab of your review at the email in the show notes, and we will send you a free Crafting Your Future guided visualization, which is so simple to do with outstanding results. It will empower you and give you the confidence to attract and create the life you've always desired. See you in our next episode.